And there you have it. Communication. It's a breeze. Difficulty in communication is one of the most common problems in marriage. Now, why is that? Why is it that something that should be so simple is so incredibly difficult for so many people? Well, please excuse me for stating the obvious, but a big part of the challenge of communicating in marriage comes from the fact that men and women are so incredibly different from each other. Men and women see things from different perspectives. For example, as the first note on your note sheet says, men and women process information in different ways. Men and women process information in different ways. Now, part of this is because of the differences in brain structures of males and females, especially in regard to a part of the brain called the corpus callosum. Now, I don't have time to go into a lot of detail about that. If you're curious about that, ask me afterwards. But basically, the result of this difference is that women tend to be able to use different parts of their brain at the same time more easily than men. Men, on the other hand, tend to use one side of the brain or the other depending on the task at hand. Part of what this means is that, generally speaking, women tend to be much better at multitasking than men are. For example, the average woman is able to have a conversation with her best friend and keep up with what's happening on the TV show and be aware of where all three of her children are and whatever they're doing at any given moment, all at the same time. She's able to process all this different data coming from different sources at the same time far more easily than most men would be able to. For example, when I visit people in the nursing home, it's very common for the person I'm visiting to have their TV on in their room. To be totally honest with you, it is incredibly difficult for me to listen to the person and listen to the TV at the same time. My brain just can't do both. And I got to admit, I can't help but wonder what's going to happen on Bonanza. Is little Joe going to make it or not? And so I have a hard time shifting back and forth between these competing data stream inputs. So I usually ask the person if they can turn the volume down on the TV or turn the TV off so that we can talk. Women tend to be better than men at multitasking. On the other hand, men tend to be better at giving focused attention to one thing at a time. For example, if a man is having serious problems in a certain area of his life, he can usually push those thoughts and feelings over to a certain room in his mind, close the door on it, and then be free to focus completely on whatever is right in front of him and accomplish that task with minimal distractions. He can then go back and deal with that problem area at a later time when he's ready to focus just on that. Authors Bill and Pam Farrell take an interesting approach to help us understand how this difference between men and women affects the way we think. They write that men are like waffles. Men are like waffles. You know what a waffle is, don't you? There's a waffle. Waffles are divided into little squares or compartments. And men tend to put the different parts of their lives into separate compartments or boxes in their minds. And they tend to only focus on one box at a time. Now, it's very important you remember that. You got all these different, well, they're gone. You got all these different boxes, and men tend to focus on only one box at a time. They'll stay in that box until the task is accomplished or the problem is solved, and then they'll move on to the next thing. They'll move on to another box. Women, on the other hand, are like spaghetti. In their minds, All the different parts of their lives are connected and intertwined. Every part of their lives relates to the other parts. And they have no problem thinking about the different areas of their lives all at once. Now, at this point, I need to issue a disclaimer. As we talk about differences between men and women, we do need to remember that we're talking about general tendencies. Not all men are like this. Not all women are like this. But these are characteristics that most men and women tend to have. So, how does this waffle spaghetti difference affect the way husbands and wives communicate? Well, as an example, a couple of months ago, Felicity and I had a conversation in which I began by sharing my frustration regarding the behavior of one of our dogs. I can see where this is going. You're already on her side. I'm just sharing frustration regarding one of our dogs. She responded to my comments and then took the conversation in another direction. And then in another direction. And then in another. And then in another. So that finally, after only just 3 minutes, everything had come back around to where the real problem was that I wasn't doing all that I was supposed to do in regard to the housework. I was thinking, I was talking about the dog. And then you went, but how did we get here? I mean, I started here, and then you jumped over to a place you weren't supposed to be. I mean, what I wanted to do was to throw out a little yellow flag, blow a whistle, and say, offsides, 5-yard penalty, still first down. Let's just reset everything, okay? But in her mind, all of the different things that she mentioned really were related. Now, I can tell from your faces that I'll bet that many of you ladies are sitting here thinking they probably were related. But most of you men are probably sitting here right now and you're thinking something like, thank you for talking about this out loud. Saying, brother, I feel your pain. I was thinking like a waffle. Everything's separate. She was thinking like spaghetti. No, everything's related. Everything's connected. Another example. Let's say that a husband has spent all day at work for 8 to 10 hours. In his mind, he's been in the work box. Then finally, he gets to go home. In his mind, he leaves the work box and finally gets to be in the, I'm finally at home box. Now, as he arrives home, he meets his wife, who also is just getting home from work. Now, what's the first thing you think she'll probably say to him? We saw it in the drama, didn't we? Honey, how was your day? How was work? Now, to him, this is very frustrating. He's thinking, I just spent all day in the work box. I've been in that one same box all day long. I was looking forward all day long to getting out of that box. Now I'm finally out of that box. I'm in the I'm finally at home box. But she wants me to go back in this box and to think about it all over again. I don't want to go back in that box.